it's key in any type of collaboration, especially in procurement collaboration, that it's a win-win. You know, both parties need to recognize some benefits, or you won't get all of your suppliers or all the parties involved to play together nicely. Typically, the benefits are achieved by using some sort of a web tool to provide better visibility or better control or accuracy or speed and automation of those transactions within your chosen parameters. And that's a key statement also. You'll hear me talk a lot today about management by exception. And when you do procurement collaboration, the real key is automate the stuff that's working well, a lot of the high volume mainstream transactions that are working well, and you don't want your valuable resources, your people, to get engaged or be executing transactions unless there's an exception or it's a real high value activity. So we're going to talk a lot about doing procurement collaboration and trying to manage it by exception. So moving on to the next slide, you know, globalization is on the rise. You know, the globalization has driven increased competition and especially complexity of operations. There's been advances in communication, transportation, other technologies that have allowed companies to sell to a broader global base. And companies are also using more business partners throughout their supply chain. So very common to have folks use contract manufacturers, design manufacturers, logistics service providers, and others. Some of these are local to where the customer may be located, but many of these partners are geographically dispersed. You know, many of the common locations over recent years, China, Taiwan, Mexico, et cetera, for outsourcing. So from a process management perspective, this higher volume and this going more global often can lead to non-scalable manual processes. So the same old way may not work anymore, the way that you've been doing it for years. Now you've got more volume, you've got a more complex process. Often there's different processes for different routes to markets, different customers, different products and geographies. The second bullet regarding increased regulations, you know, whenever you're crossing global boundaries, going more globally, there's import, export, safety, security considerations. You know, having done business with companies in China in the past, for example, you know, just getting a product out of one of the provinces within a city or out of a free trade zone can be really complex, let alone moving product outside of a country. So there's a lot of complexities involved, a lot of specific trade regulations to be aware of. Third point, technical diversity. You know, working with different suppliers in different companies, they all have different levels of sophistication. Some of the larger, more high-volume suppliers may be very adept at using EDI. Some of the low-volume suppliers, you know, they're going to communicate with spreadsheet, with faxes. So you've got to deal with that diverse technology capability. Also regarding financial requirements, they can be very complex, crossing borders. There's different reporting rules, accounting rules, taxation differences, et cetera. And finally, you know, just greater risk of value chain disruption. You know, the more links, the more partners you have in that value chain, that supply chain, there's more opportunities to fail. It's kind of a negative way to look at it, but it's true. Also, some of the big macro events like the tsunami in Japan, the floods in Malaysia, you know, in the past, you know, have put a highlight on how connected we are with all of our processes. And nowadays, as they say, if somebody sneezes somewhere, then everyone is going to catch a cold, and if it's a big enough sneeze, maybe we'll catch pneumonia. So the key is to set up our processes and our procurement collaboration in a way that's very flexible and helps us, you know, respond proactively and reactively to those risks so that we can manage all that complexity and that rapid change. So some of the current statistics that are somewhat surprising, the first pie chart here, 70% of companies currently are not using automated data and event monitoring or optimized process capabilities for inbound materials management. So almost 3/4 of the companies out there are not using some automated tools and functions for inbound data management. The second pie chart there, From an outbound perspective, almost half of companies are still using manual processes for outbound shipping. So for definitional purposes, some of the things on the inbound side fall into this procure-to-pay category that we're talking about. So communicating purchase orders, purchase order acknowledgments, doing receiving, visibility to materials, managing quality, invoice status, package tracking numbers, advanced ship notices, etc. On the outbound side, these are activities related to warehouse events, carrier pickups, delivery confirmation, statuses, etc. So even though companies are continuing to expand globally, it's remarkable the number of companies that are not yet using some of the automated tools and capabilities that are out there. So there's a lot of opportunity on the table to make our processes better. Some of the benefits of procurement collaboration. So several of them are listed here at a reasonably high level. The results always vary, depending on differences in companies, differences in business models and implementations. But a lot of the customers that we talk to, when you look at in the press and analysts and such, a lot of these results that are shown here are relatively typical of companies that are successful in implementing more of an automated procurement collaboration solution. So regarding reducing disruptions, both being more proactive and reactive as you have better visibility or better event management, maybe faster, more accurate communication. Again, the key is management by exception. You want to be able to configure the process the way that you want to run your business and automate it, and only focus your time on managing the key exceptions. Regarding reducing non-compliance events, these are things like customer fines for late shipments or early shipments. Maybe the wrong item was shipped, or you've got incorrect documentation, incorrect labeling, import-export reporting. Those out there that maybe have done business with major retailers, like, say, Walmart, for example, they have very specific process requirements, very specific labeling requirements, and if you're not able to comply to their guidelines, there can be some pretty significant financial penalties as well as just the loss of customer satisfaction. You don't want to lose that business. Inventory carrying costs, again, with a good procurement collaboration solution, the speed, the accuracy of your data should improve, the predictability of the process. That generally leads to being able to have lower levels of safety stock or inventory. And that's a big savings that's often missed, when companies are looking at projects and calculating their return on investment. Sometimes you can look at the direct costs, the manual labor savings, things of that nature, but the ability to be more predictable and have more speed and cut down that inventory is very key. In working with our customers, we've seen a lot of different results, anywhere up to 100% first pass yield on purchase orders, coming up from, say, 50% yield, savings of $8 to $24 per PO transaction if they're able to implement a collaboration solution reasonably well within their organization. And on top of that, you've got the inventory savings we mentioned, also, the ability to take advantage of suppliers' early payment discounts. If you can manage that process very tightly, a lot of it is, 2% discount in 10 days is kind of a common term. That can be millions of dollars depending on your volume. And if you don't have an efficient process or if it's real manual, you're missing out on a lot of those savings. So from a global expansion perspective, like most things out there, most business processes, the real key, is you've got to have people, you've got to have process, and you have to have technology all working together. On the people side, the knowledge, the expertise, the availability, the ability to hire the best local talent. Maybe, Joe Smith from Midtown USA, works at your company. He may be an awesome worker, but if he's never been to China, if he can't speak Chinese, he doesn't understand Chinese regulations, maybe he's not the best person or choice to manage your China expansion operation. So you've got to have people that can understand the local markets, local regulations, have the language skills, the cultural knowledge, understand local regulation, taxes, etc. In addition, from a process perspective, if you have more geography, distance, time zone differences, the larger scale from going global, they force you to really go more automated and do things a lot less manually. You often need unique processes for specific geographies or specific markets. And again, from a process perspective, it's key to be able to manage by exception. You want those high-volume core processes to work in an automated way, and you don't want people manually entering transactions or logging into systems to execute things that can be automated. You want their time spent on the very high-value added activities or specific exceptions. From a technology perspective, as you have additional locations, partners, they often have different systems and tools. Maybe they're running different ERP systems, different planning systems. All of these different systems need to be able to talk and play nicely together, to sync up, to share data. Also, mobile technology is critical as you go global, to be able to conduct transactions from anywhere in real time. So the ability to integrate these different technologies across partners is really key. What industry supply chain leaders, the leaders that are out there, they typically are hitting on all cylinders with all three of these things. They're great in people, process, technology. Maybe the laggards are good in one or two, but as you go global, as you have that complexity, we all need to strive to make sure we've got the right knowledge, the right process, the right technology to be able to compete effectively. The good news is there's some really good technology and solutions out there to help from a procurement collaboration standpoint. Some examples of savings that are left on the table if you don't have a good collaboration solution. The first one here on the upper right there, consolidated and reduced spend. So some of the key constraints here are often supplier onboarding or distributed systems. If your suppliers don't have compatible technology, or they're low tech, or maybe they don't see a perceived benefit of getting on board with your collaboration program or tool, often companies will try to roll it out and they may stop and only have about 50% of their spend under management, that they never make that leap and get more suppliers onboarded under management. Similarly, with the multiple or unconnected data sources across companies, it can add a lot of cost per transaction. You've got your buyers, your planners logging in and out of multiple systems, so it's key to get as many suppliers as you can consolidated to manage that spend. Second area, reduce cycle time. So the discussion around automation, improved accuracy from that automation, communication visibility that's faster. It's a really high cost of poor communication or slow communication, especially if you've got a long lead time supply chain. If your supplier changes a PO promise date and you don't know that until the shipment arrives late or it ships late, sometimes for these long lead time items, a delay like that, even if you find out about it, it's unrecoverable. It's too late. So you've got to be able to have that accurate, quick, predictable information. And also, as we said, that reduced cycle time, that predictability can lead to inventory reduction also. From a compliance perspective, early payment discounts, I mentioned them earlier, but if you manage the process very tight from procure to pay, if you're able to not miss those early payment discounts, that's a significant chunk of money in your pocket. Also, late shipment penalties, compliance penalties, as I discussed earlier with the Walmart example. If you've got regulatory requirements that are not met, you can have delays, customs delays, other penalties. Another savings, optimized spot buys, so more in the sourcing side. There's modules and tools out there for e-auctions, things that you can do to really help you lower the price, especially on commodity type purchases. Improved process efficiency. Again, back to the automation, accuracy, speed, visibility of communication. You want to lower your transaction cost to get your cost per PO very low. It goes back to being able to automate, use workflows, manage by exception, save yourself time and money, and only focus on the highest value activities. Finally, better supplier performance. So KPIs are critical. The ability to have more automated dashboards, more automated and accurate metrics that you can work with your suppliers on. Some of the key ones, like on-time response to your purchase order. You want your supplier to be able to give you a purchase order acknowledgement in a very timely manner, and you'd like it to be a meaningful acknowledgement and not just an acknowledgement to say they got it. The ability to measure, are the suppliers shipping on time? Are they delivering on time per your requirements and your contractual obligations? All these things, are left on the table if you don't manage them well. And again, some of the technology that's out there, the collaboration tools that are out there can help a great deal. So some of the technology advances in the supplier integration space, again, being able to collaborate with diverse systems, different suppliers, different partners using different technologies as well as different systems. The ability to transact with EDI. You may have some folks using RosettaNet or XML or FTP. You've got suppliers that want to do spreadsheet uploads, doing web entry or web forms. There's technology out there to really simplify the integration of multiple different technologies and formats into a common tool. And also just the concept of getting to a single management console. So even though you've got folks working in different systems, you don't want your team to be logging in and out of different systems and taking time in that regard. We've got several customers that, as a result of a merger or acquisition, sometimes evolution of their system strategy, they're running several ERP systems. I'm sure there's nobody on the phone that falls into that category and is running more than one ERP. And so for some of these customers, we have one that's running Oracle and SAP, but they're able to use a collaboration tool and share and manage their purchase orders and purchase order acts with the supplier with a single management console, a single user interface to get a common view of that. There's another that has a homegrown legacy procurement system, as well as SAP, and you're able to do the same thing. You can get all of this data into one common place. It really simplifies the speed and the accuracy of being able to manage that data and control the process. Another technology advance that all of us are probably very aware of, mobile devices. So there's been a huge growth in mobile devices. Some of the statistics, last year, 2012, it was said that around 22% of companies in the U.S. had deployed tablets in their workforce. A lot of that was used in sales or customer relationship management, rapidly expanding out to other areas like supply chain. The usage of these mobile devices is expected and projected to triple in large companies by 2015. So 3/4 of companies will be using these kind of tablets or mobile devices. Smartphones are even more prevalent. The adoption has been faster for smartphones. So in your procurement collaboration solution, you want to make sure that you have the capability to execute the key buyer and supplier side transactions on these mobile devices to keep the process moving and expedite them. Some of the common things are relatively simple around purchase order approval or inventory approvals or suppliers doing an acknowledgement on their mobile device. It can make a difference in a whole work day if someone can approve something on a mobile device versus having to be sitting there at their desk in the office. Another key technology advance around the workflow automation and intelligence. Again, you're going to see and hear management by exception. Don't allow yourself to be constrained by the use of a software tool that forces you to live within the narrow constraints of that tool's predefined process, or if that tool does not give you the flexibility to configure the tool to fit your desired business process. Again, you want to be able to manage by exception, set up your desired process, your alerts, your configurations, let that high volume normal stuff flow through, and only get alerted and only have to take action when exceptions occur. some of the tools and some of the things that are out there that are somewhat common. You can configure processes for different customers, different regions. For purchase order approval, you can set up a workflow or a business process that says, if the purchase order is greater than a certain dollar amount, I want to get it routed to person A or work group A. But if it's less than that dollar amount, let it flow through. I don't need to touch it. Or if it's going to this particular customer that's having an issue or this particular region, I want to have a different workflow for that purchase order approval. Same thing for your acknowledgments. If your supplier is acknowledging your PO, if they're just acknowledging exactly what you sent them, you probably don't need to touch that. But if they're going to make a change to the quantity, maybe a change to the date, you can configure if you allow them to do that or not. But if they do, you want to be notified of those kind of changes so you can check them out, approve them, before you pass them on to your ERP system and take action on those. Similarly, with invoice approvals and validations, you can have those kind of rules. Shipping window validations, if you don't want suppliers to ship early, ship late. There's things around shipping label and document formats where you can manage the printing of different documents and labels, whether it's regulatory or customer-driven, with different workflow rules. So this is a real key piece of technology that's out there and is real important as part of your collaboration solution. Some of the functional areas to drill down a little bit further into from a technology perspective, one of the things that a lot of tools aren't very good at helping you do is around sales order dropship. So what we see often is two kinds of sales order dropship. There's the sales order that you may send to your supplier directly using an outbound delivery, or you may get a sales order that drives a purchase order within your system, and you'll send that purchase order to your supplier, and that'll have a ship to address of your customer and a bill to address of your supplier. But doing these kind of things, you often see customers doing a lot of manual workarounds to, virtually receive, virtually ship things in their systems. It is possible with a good collaboration system to automate a lot of those capabilities. So some of the virtual receiving of shipments, the advanced ship notices, the invoicing, some of those things can be automated so there's not as much manual intervention in those processes for dropship. Another area is around pre-ship validation and release. So maybe you've got a problem supplier that's always shipping early or outside of your requirements. You can set specific rules that say, for this supplier, I'm not going to allow this supplier to ship unless he does a pre-ship validation. So he'll send kind of a pre-ASN into your collaboration tool. You can look at it and make sure the exact quantity, the timing, the dates of that shipment match your PO and match what you want. And if it does, you can release that pre-ship validation and allow the supplier to print his labels and documents and do the shipment. There's some capabilities that allow you to do those types of things as well. From a quality perspective, something that we call QUD, or a quality usage decision, you can set up, say, your invoice matching. Typically you may do a three-way invoice match, matching the purchase order, the invoice, the receipt, but you can also require a quality check to be matched as well before you can pay the invoice. You can also do things around automating the communication or the resolution of corrective action requests or deviations as part of a quality module. From an engineering perspective, the good collaboration tools will allow you to attach engineering drawings or specs to the purchase orders that you send to your suppliers. You can maintain item revisions in those POs as well. There's also business intelligence and analytics, helping to automate, as we discussed earlier, the KPIs or dashboards for the suppliers. You can also do things now, the term predictive analytics, analyzing some data and helping you make a very rapid decision based on that data as part of your collaboration process. And finally, rules-based management of documents and certifications. So you can have tighter control of your regulatory requirements depending on the business model or region. You can set up a collaboration tool so that your supplier can go into that tool and they can maintain their certifications themselves. Another example, I previously did some work with a high-tech company who had a supplier that shipped product from a factory to countries in every continent, and they had a shipping label and document rule-based engine as part of their communication and collaboration with that contract manufacturer that would allow them to have different label formats, different document sets that were printed depending on different criteria, different factors. So if it's going to one ship-to country or going to a different customer using a different transportation mode or a different route to market, it was a whole different document set or label that was printed out, and it was all based on rules that could be configured and managed for that partner. There's a lot of good technology out there, and as the earlier slide showed, a lot of companies aren't taking advantage of it today. Another consideration in global expansion from an international support perspective, the ability to manage multiple languages. So in the user interface of your tool or in your documentation, to be able to handle multiple languages. From finance and accounting perspective, invoicing in multiple currencies, managing the different tax regulations with your tool, the different trade regulations, global trade regulations. Also from a spend area expansion perspective, most people start and say, hey, the biggest bang for our buck, the biggest ROI is direct materials for cost of goods sold. You'll manage that tightly with a collaboration process. You could also include some variations around vendor-managed inventory and improving that process. But there's other areas of spend like indirect spend for office supplies or non-overhead items, maintenance and repair items. There's a lot of creative things that some of our customers have done around managing or integrating visibility to data in remote areas, like in the oil and gas or mining industry where you don't have internet access. You can do some things around collaborating and making sure that data is available to the key partners and at the time you need it. Also capital assets or services. These are all different areas of a company's spend that collaboration tools can be used to help automate and manage. So a real-world example, another slightly more detailed example. One of our customers is a large global oil and gas company, and the challenge that they faced, they had material delivery delays from suppliers. They had late payments going out to suppliers. They had a lot of manual processing of transactions. They didn't have tight control or visibility of those end-to-end processes. They had a very high cost of processing transactions, and they're continuing to go global. They're adding more volume. They're adding more suppliers. So what they did, they implemented an automated procure-to-pay solution. They ended up with over 2,000 suppliers that were onboarded worldwide. They had over 400 internal users, and they expanded their spend areas. And again, some of the challenges, the drivers of their challenges, they had a lot of wasted labor or redundant processes. They had manual errors in their processes. Change order management, they didn't have good control of the change order management process. Some of the enhancements in the solution, automating some of these things all the way from procurement to the payment of invoices, being able to convert requests for quotes to purchase orders, flip the POs to invoices on the supplier side, incorporating some quality checks as part of that AP automation, adding multi-language support. They expanded their spend areas that they were managing to, indirect services, other areas, and they really focused on this management by exception, really setting up workflows so that the high volume transactions were pretty automated. They had good rules in place to manage as exceptions the things where they needed a human to be involved. And the bottom line, they automated 90% of their division spend. They had their invoice processing first pass accuracy yield up over 99%. And in the very first year, they saved over $2 million, and each year it grew. In year 3, they're anticipating over $4.5 million of savings. So it was done more with step function improvements, measurable benchmarks, but it's a good example of a very successful collaboration implementation. So some of the biggest opportunities, if you look out into your companies, your space, if you're looking at trying to improve or implement a collaboration solution for the first time, from an automation perspective, again, the high volume transactions and the common pain points around generating POs, acknowledging POs, managing change orders and acknowledging those, matching your invoices, to the POs, the receipts. Some of the hidden areas maybe that folks don't focus on as much, but there are opportunities as well. The PO to invoice conversion, a lot of companies focus on the invoice matching, but they may miss this step or not focus on it. And this is often the root cause of a lot of the invoice mismatches. If they can tighten up the process on how suppliers can flip a PO to an invoice, you can eliminate a lot of other downstream issues. Another area is around non-PO invoicing. So there's some solutions out there that don't offer a good way to handle non-purchase order invoicing, but it can yield significant savings, manual effort, time, the ability to create invoices without a PO. So if you can do it with reference to an authorization for expenditure or a specific project or a work order, you can reduce a lot of manual work. Another area is around supplier shipping. We talked a bit about that already, the PO validation and release, particularly for problem suppliers, but you can control that process more tightly. You can also allow suppliers to create package tracking numbers and automated shipment notices to give better visibility and help automate the receiving of those shipments when they get to your receiving point. And finally, around documentation and certification management, we talked about that. You can onboard suppliers, allow them to maintain their own docs and certifications in your tool. So there's a lot of areas where there's opportunities, as well as the high volume common areas that are just focused on the PO. Some other areas from a technology perspective, around integration and having different systems, different technologies. We've talked about the idea of you want to get a higher % of your suppliers onboarded regardless of technology. So again, looking at the collaboration tools, making sure there's flexibility there to communicate in a variety of methods with a variety of different systems. And again, that concept of getting the data into a unified console or one place. So even if it's coming from multiple different systems, multiple different suppliers, it's real important to be able to manage that data in a common location and not have to flip back and forth with multiple logins. So some of the next steps, what we recommend, probably like many projects, the best place to start is always a business process review, or what we call a BPR. You really need to clearly understand your current state processes, your capabilities, your pain points, before you can figure out exactly what the right next step is and what you want your future state to look like. It's important you align it with corporate goals, but you've got to start with understanding, where you're at today. What are your capabilities and your issues today? Also, identify the top 2 or 3 opportunities. It's very important to prioritize. You don't want a shotgun approach. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew, spread yourself too thin. Focus on 1, 2, 3 key opportunities to really focus your resources, mitigate the risk, and also define your success around those opportunities. Be very clear regarding what does success mean to you, how are you going to measure it within your company, and also benchmark that. Work with industry groups, external consultants, understand what some of the best-in-class or leading companies are doing, so you have some reasonable goals to shoot for in that space. Some early value tips, view this type of collaboration improvement project or process as a journey. It's not just a quick 3-month or 6-month install, but make it manageable chunks with measurable return on investment for each chunk. It's often good to plan milestones and interim improvement targets, and that'll help you gain momentum for change management. If you can show some success and some ROI with some short-term benefits, it helps get folks on board. People are resistant to change, and if there's a lot of manual processes or things that have been done the same way for years, it's important to show some success step by step, get people excited, get them on board. It's a good way to go. So transitioning to the next slide here, our company is Take Supply Chain. We have a product in the collaboration space that we call One SCM Enterprise. This is just a high-level architecture view of that. And again, from an enterprise perspective or from a trading partner perspective, one of the key benefits that we see in our product is it does have that flexible integration capability. If you've got different systems inside your business, ERP, MRP, WMS, whatever, our tool is built on an EAI layer, an enterprise application integration layer, that helps it integrate with multiple systems. It also can integrate with supplier systems using EDI, XML, web forms, web portal, etc. So it does make it easy to get a lot of spend under management. It also has a proprietary and configurable workflow business process management engine that we have, and you can run all of your transactions, your communication transaction, your business processes through a common workflow engine and really help you to manage by exception. In addition, it has multiple different functional modules around, listed there on the slide, all the way procure to pay. There's some quality modules, AP automation, the ability to manage inventory or vendor-managed inventory, do some demand collaboration. They can be implemented as standalone modules or capabilities or as solution sets. So it's a good tool. And again, it's not intended to rip and replace or replace your existing systems, but it's set up in a way that it will complement your existing systems and help you get to that single console for managing collaboration with your suppliers. So again, some of the key benefits: you can get more spend under management because it's easier to onboard suppliers with multiple different technologies. It's mobile and cloud enabled. You can do transactions on multiple devices, your iPhone, etc. The capability is offered as an on-premise solution, and it's also offered as a service via a cloud solution. So there's flexibility. If you're, have budget issues and can't afford a big capital expenditure, you can set it up to do it as a service via a cloud subscription. It also helps often with a cloud-type project to maybe implement it a little faster or narrow the scope with a pilot or a proof of concept. Just the concept of getting accelerated data flow. Again, this is the automation, workflow management that we've talked a lot about, and the ability to have that single management console. Again, the way that it's architected on the EAI layer helps you pull together functional processes and messaging communication and use common workflows and business processes for all of those. So Take Supply Chain, quick overview as a company. We are a supply chain software solutions company and provider. Our goal is to significantly improve global trading partner collaboration and process efficiency, and we focus, most of our customers are in the manufacturing and distribution space. A lot of the logos there on the right side are folks that we work with, a sampling of some of our customers. We offer software, we offer services, project management, support, and we are located in Austin, Texas. That's the end of the formal part of the presentation and the slides. From a Q&A perspective, as you can see, my email is there, Donna's email is there. if you have questions that we're not able to answer during this Q&A period that we're about to have, please do shoot us an email, give us a call. We'd love to have conversations with you and help you improve your collaboration with your suppliers. So I'll turn it back over to Donna.
Thanks, David, and I think that was a great presentation. As I mentioned before, David will be available online for the next few minutes to answer any questions that you have. Just submit your question using the QA box on the right side of your screen. And as David talked about, and as you've already seen on the screen, we do have our contact information up for you, so you can contact us after the close of the presentation today. We also will have a recorded version of this presentation available on our site at takesolutions.com early next week. So let's get to our first question. How much should our system support EDI moving forward? Will global suppliers need to connect via web portal or via SFTP?
Okay. As with a lot of questions, I'll start out with it depends. It depends on your supplier base. EDI has been around for a very long time, and from what we see, we expect EDI to continue to be used, especially among larger suppliers. Generally the larger, higher volume suppliers use EDI. Often the smaller suppliers, or more often if you're a smaller global supplier in particular, they may not support EDI. So we generally recommend that our customers maintain the ability to connect with multiple technologies so that they can get as much spend under management as possible, as I was discussing in the slide. So the idea is to make it as easy as possible to onboard suppliers, not give them an excuse to not come on board with your collaboration initiatives and programs. So there's good collaboration tools out there that have the ability to connect in multiple methods, but I think EDI is obviously key. It's going to stay for a while, and especially for high volume large suppliers, you're going to need that capability.
Okay. Next question. How much should we prepare for regulatory issues as we move past the UK?
Okay, so UK, I assume United Kingdom. So if you're expanding into a new country or a new region, again, the answer is always it depends. Depends on where you're expanding to, but as you expand your global trade across any international borders, there's always regulatory requirements that are there. They're always going to change. So we recommend customers implement solutions that have as much flexibility built in as possible, meaning you want to minimize hard coding of requirements or hard coding of process steps. So as you move into new countries or as regulations change, as we all know they do, you've got the ability to quickly adopt and adapt to those changes at minimal cost. And hopefully you can do it by just updating some configurations or updating rules in your systems and not have a lot of programming that you have to do. So a lot of countries out there, China and others, have very strict procurement inventory regulations. So it is important that as you expand, you understand those regulations and you have a tool that will let you relatively quickly adapt to them without a lot of hard coding and time.
Okay, let's see. Here's another question. What's a good transaction volume cutoff for implementing automation?
You can guess what the first part of the answer will be, as it depends on many factors. It's hard to have a hard and fast rule that says, hey, this volume, it makes sense to automate. You really do have to look at your business. What geographies are you working in? What are your process lead times? The criticality of those processes? How much manual effort and customization do you currently have? What's your current business model? What's your current level of pain? How much pain are you willing to live with? Or how much inefficiency do you have? So I think the key is you want to ensure that if you implement a new tool or implement some collaboration or some automation, you do want to get a positive return on investment for that. So doing it in smaller, more manageable chunks, maybe a pilot or a proof of concept. Make sure you have a good combination of automating and also the ability to configure some workflows and manage by exception is key. So I guess that's the general recommendation. It depends. You want to have some flexibility, but the bottom line is you want to make sure that it benefits your company and it's not a project just for the sake of having an automation project. So even small volumes can make sense depending on the circumstance.
Okay, let's see. Looking at the clock, I think we probably have time for one more question. So here it is. In your case study, how long did it take to get those results?
Yeah, that particular, the oil and gas company, they worked over a period of several years to build out their automation capabilities, kind of as part of an overall improvement cost reduction strategy. I think the primary project took, just over 3 years. It did involve different phases, different milestones, so that the project was able to fund itself. So as they got cost savings and performance improvements, they'd kind of reinvest those back in another phase of the project. We found if you implement automation or a project in that way and make it somewhat self-funding, again, you get more change management benefits, you get more people on board, and it's also easier to justify if you can show some real savings that's funding itself each step of the way.
Okay. Well, thank you, David. This concludes the Q&A portion of our presentation. Thanks to everyone again for joining us. If we were unable to get to your question, we will contact you directly with a response. As a reminder, if you do have any follow-up questions, please feel free to contact us at the information on the screen, and we look forward to seeing you online or in person again very soon.